City Council regular meeting, order, Tuesday, December 2nd, 12 p.m. Could we have a roll call, Bev?
Nelson?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yes.
Rexwinkle?
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Turkey?
Thank you. Would you please rise and say the pledge of allegiance to the flag? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'd like to welcome the people in the chamber today and the individuals from the Lamar's Daily Sentinel, and particularly you people that are watching over television at our council meeting. First thing on the agenda is the general discussion. And the way we handle our general discussion, if anybody has any concerns or comments or good things to say about the city, we ask them to stand at the podium and state their name and address. Council cannot make any decisions on it, but they're always certainly willing to listen to what you have to say. Do we have anybody from discussion today? If not, we'll move on. John?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Nothing,
Clerk?
nothing.
I got a smorgasbord.
Okay.
First item is last weekend was the Frosty Cross for bicyclists that like to go on terrain in winter conditions. I don't know who that would be, but they had a good turnout, a lot of people. They had lights up and everything at night, so hats off to those people and those volunteers. Then if you don't like biking in this weather, you probably like candy. Floyd Valley Hospital Auxiliary is making candy right now. They've been making it for a while. All the proceeds go to the hospital, but it is some of the best fudge, peanut clusters, and caramels you'll ever have in your life. And that is a whole different group of volunteers. And then if those two don't satisfy you, you can come to the lighted parade this Saturday, then go out to Pioneer Village and see an old-time Christmas, and you'll see lots of smiles on kids' faces. So if you can't find something there, you're not trying. That's all good stuff. That's all in Lamar's, and it's all within inside of 7-8 days. This is a pretty good place to live.
Thank you, Rex.
Just to add to the parade this weekend, congratulations to Sertoma for stepping up to the plate and taking over the control of that parade. And I hope that works out well for them. They got a little young blood, and some of those older guys are happy to step aside and have some youth take over. But enjoy the parade.
Exactly right, Ken, and Sertoma did step up this year and has agreed to take over that portion of the parade, and we wish them well. I also want to comment on Rex's comments in the Frosty Cross. I personally went out Saturday afternoon and spent a little time out there. This is put on by Monty Brent and Mark Strube and the bicyclists, and I'm telling you, these people come from all over. One of the winners was from Colorado. I know there are people from Minnesota, Kansas, and all over. So it's a big function, and they had a great turnout on Saturday. Sunday was a little bit thin because of the clement weather, but it's a good thing they bring a lot of people to town. So I want to thank them for doing that. Going on to the consent items, all items listed under the consent agenda will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items unless a request is made prior to the time the council votes on the motion. Today we've only got 4 of them. Approval of the November 18th, 2014 regular meeting minutes. Number 2 is a list of the bills for the period ending 11/30 of 14. Number 3 is the STP Capital Project, Iowa. 3, West Trail. And number 4 is surplus property. Do any of you council members have anything you want to pull of these before we vote?
Pull C3?
Pull 3's C3?
Yes.
STP Capital Project. Okay, John?
So to clarify, how much money was not funded federally funded by federal funding? What is the total amount, Bill? That is some liability of the people of Lamar's.
If you count the in-kind labor, the total project was $409,000.
of which the grant was 160, so about 249,000.
249,000, and that did not pay for the equipment that the city used.
Yeah, there's no
Fuel
equipment
or
figured in there.
Equipment or depreciation.
Right. just
249
labor.
plus equipment. Okay.
Did I answer your question, John? Okay. I entertain a motion to,
Motion to approve consent items 1 through 4.
Second.
motion made and second to approve the items 1 through 4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Did you get that, Bev? It was one aye. Action items. The first one is the CDBG Lamar's Main Street facade rehabilitation. The project is the award bid on November 19th, 2014. The bids were received for the CDBG Lamar's Main Street facade rehabilitation project. A copy of the bids was received as attached. Recommendation awarding the contract to the low bidder will be available from Pete Franks and the staff prior to and at the meeting. And I noticed we just got Mr. Franks on the phone here. The financial impact is in accordance with the CDBG grant and the original budgets. And Scott, I'm going to turn over to you to share where we're at on this program and what we knew.
Okay, contained in your agenda is a bid tabulation of the 3 bids that we received, and the low bidder is Renaissance Restoration Incorporated at $739,456. There is an ad alternate of $19,800. The other bidders are in the $900,000 range, so there's quite a spread between the low and the next 2 bidders. Also in front of you is a December 2nd letter written by Pete Franks. Pete is on the phone, so you can answer any questions directly that you might have. But contained in that letter, he's basically outlining that he's asking to have you award the project to the low bidder, again, Renaissance Restoration Incorporated, for the stated amount. There are a couple of things that we want to visit with the contractor about. I think in that letter you will find that he indicates there was several of the bids that were under his estimate for the detail. There were some that were right on, and there were a couple that were over. And once awarded, we want to take the opportunity to visit with the awarded contractor and see if there's any clarifications, any adjustments that need to be made in the scope of the work, in the contract documents, to see if there's any kind of value engineering that can be done on those particular ones, especially those that are in excess of his estimate. But with that exception, we feel that we have a good contractor here. I think he points out that all 3 of the contractors certainly have the capability of doing the work, and he has personally worked with Renaissance Restoration on other projects. So I think we can feel good that we've got a representative sample of what this work might cost.
Been a lot of time and effort put into it.
Yes.
Sure that.
So the total ends up being 200, or 759, is that right? When you add the 2 together?
Yes.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm curious about at what point do the 29 businesses say we're in or out? Or do they still have that option, or are they all in, or, well, I'll pick on Joe. If his came in higher or lower, or he didn't like it, does he still have an option to leave, or how does that work?
He would have the option to leave, but we would have to then change order that out of the project.
Okay, I didn't know how that worked. Okay.
And is there any expense involved in the change order or not?
The property owner would lose that 25%
Right.
that down payment that they put in somewhere in the February timeframe.
But that's 25 of the 25%, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I thought so, okay. Okay.
And all projected participants have been notified of the estimated cost for their portion of the project?
Until we get clarification of the bids on all 29, it'll be at that point that all 29 will be notified.
And that would be after we award the,
Yeah, the legislature has pretty much clarified that we need to make an award before we begin any kind of negotiating with the contractor on that bid. So now that we've taken the bid, we first got to either say we reject the bids or we accept the bids before we can negotiate change orders and such.
Question, Scott, the 759.46, that includes the 19.8?
No, it does not.
That's what I was wondering, I think you mistook that too.
No, the 759,256 does include.
The
It's-
59
it's
does,
the
the
two.
39 does not.
I'm sorry.
The 739 does not include it.
759.
He quoted the sum of the two.
Right,
Right.
right.
And we're going to move for the alternate today?
I believe that to be the case, and Pete, are you on board with that?
Well, the ad alternate was removing and replacing the ground level building, or the ground level windows rather, at John Meese's property, and we need to visit with him to share that number with him and see if he is interested in accepting that and incorporating that into the work for his property or not. So at this point, that's direction that we're going to need from the individual property owner. We can make it work either way in terms of the overall project budget.
I would recommend that you award it, and then if we do want it back out of there, we'll delete it by change order.
Okay.
Motion adopting resolution number 14-38, awarding the contract to the CDBG Lamar's Main Street Facade Rehabilitation Project to Renaissance Restoration in the amount of the total, which is $259,256.
759.
750.
Excuse me, that's my fault. Yes, it is 7, my fault.
759, 256.
759, yep.
So
I said that wrong.
What's the city's net cost with this number?
Be 25%, right?
Is it 25%?
It's 25%. That's.
Or is it?
Well, the reason I hesitate, you're looking at the raw construction bid,
Right.
and what gets added to the raw construction is everything from grant administration that Simcoe is doing, to sub-consultants of Pete Franks, to Pete Franks' contract, and when all that's added together, I think we're right in the same type of figure that we are before we went out for bids, which is $1,038,000 or $1,058,000.
So,
And of that, Rex, the answer to your question is $250,000, which is 25% of the total project costs.
But this, awarding this bid does not put us in further than 250 as we look to today.
Anything over $1 million is slightly over the 250, but we're right in that ballpark that you approved
But we
prior
got a
to
good
bid.
bid and we should be close to that
Yes.
number. Okay.
Yes.
I'd second the motion.
Okay.
Motion made and second, adopting resolution number 14-38, awarding the contract for the CDBG Lamar's Main Street Facade Rehabilitation Project to Renaissance Restoration Incorporated in the amount of $759,456.
256. You gotta add the two together, that's okay.
Okay, 759,256.
Correct.
Do we have a roll call on that, Bev?
Rex Winkel?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yeah.
Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. We look forward to being under construction.
Real good.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, moving on to D2, which is the sewer rate ordinance. Excuse me, capital charge. At the November 18th, 2014 meeting, the council approved the first reading of the ordinance of number 925 revised capital cost charge to raise the capital user charges to the amount needed to fully fund the wastewater treatment plant project. Each of the signed user agreements contain language to allow the capital charge rate to be increased should cost exceed projections, as well as not to exceed amounts. In the Wells agreement, the not to exceed amount for capital cost is $20 million, or that's $83,333 a month. And the amount in Dean Foods agreement is not to exceed $5.1 million, and that amounts to $21,250 a month. The user agreements are for a period of 20 years, and is a recommendation of the utility committee and the city staff to raise the capital charges to the maximum allowed by the signed user agreements. Wells Enterprises at $83,333 per month, and Dean's Foods at $21,250 per month. These rates will remain in effect for a period of 20 years. The financial impact is we are hopeful that by raising the capital charges as proposed and paying off the debt earlier, we will be able to have the new wastewater treatment plant project be fully funded by the two users. Any questions from the council on this project?
Motion approving the second reading of ordinance number 925, revising sewer capital cost charges.
Second.
Motion been made and second, approving the second reading of the ordinance number 925, revising sewer capital cost charges. Do we have a roll call on that, Beth?
Nelson,
Yes.
Knapp,
Yes.
Rosenko,
Yes.
Schiffman.
Yes.
Motion carried. Moving on to D3, which is the city railroad track. The city has been actively negotiating with the Canadian National Railroad regarding the future operations of the city railroad tracks. The old agreement between the city and CN is dated October 9th, 2009, and has a 60-day termination and discontinuance clause. Burlington Short Line Railroad Incorporated, which is BSLR, was selected by the Rail Committee as the preferred short line of the three short lines investigated. Burlington Short Line Railroad has been assisting the city, the LBIC, and the Rail Committee in all strategies and negotiations. The Rail Committee met yesterday, Monday, December 1st, 2014, to prepare the recommendation to the council. However, the attached switching services agreement is the final draft being considered. The financial impact is, per attached agreement, nearly all operational, maintenance, repairs, construction, personnel, liability, insurance, grounds care, clerical, taxes per maintenance, defense, liens, and so forth, shall be the responsibility of the BSLR Railroad. This represents an operation and maintenance budget annual savings to the city. I will share with you that the Rail Committee did meet yesterday afternoon and went through this verbatim as to where we're at this stage of the game, and they approved to work with this contract 100%.
Scott, could you just give a few highlights so that the public understands what we're really dealing with, or how this will operate?
Yeah. The city, in approximately 2009, the city purchased the last link between the main line railroad that goes through Lamar's and the industrial track that goes into our industrial park. It was 1,600 feet long. We purchased it from the Canadian National. They were still doing business as Chicago Central and Pacific. Prior to that, and starting in about 1996, 1997, when the city bought the old Beef America site, that had a rail spur going down to it, and that was about the first time that the city got involved with owning rail, industrial track. And we applied for a grant, and we extended it from 18th Street to 21st. So the city owned the southerly piece, but CN or CCP owned the northerly piece. So in 2009, when we bought that northern piece, then 100% of the industrial track became the property of the city. As such, CN wouldn't operate on that line unless they had an agreement. And so the 2009 agreement really revised the previous agreement by which CN simply agreed that when the industries called for loads to come in, they would operate on the city track. They had an exclusive right to operate. So from 2009 to present, they have the exclusive right to operate on city track. City owns it, but they operate it. What we're doing here is, because they only come in 2, maybe 3 times a week, that leaves really our industries fending for themselves as to juggling cars around, maneuvering them in the right spot to be unloaded, and further maneuvering them in the right spot to be re-picked up by CN. We feel as a group, starting with the LBIC, working through the rail committee and staff, that it's just too cumbersome. We have cottonseed coming in, we got aggregate coming in, we got resin coming in, we've got some frozen product, et cetera, and more to come as time goes on, that each of the individual industries were having to juggle those cars around on both city track as well as sidings in order to position them so they can operate properly. And what that then requires is each one of the 6 entities, the industries moving those cars, they needed their own power. And so you might have heard the word track mobile. There is, Wells had a track mobile, GCC has a track mobile, so, and then some of them didn't have one, so they were using kind of alternate power, and that wasn't always the safest. So we really feel as a group that we need a more organized approach to operate on the city track within the city's industrial park area. So the first motion and the recommendation given to you by the rail committee is to, in fact, hire a firm, which is Burlington Short Line Railroad Incorporated, that you would turn your city track over to them fully and completely to operate it. And by the agreement that's in your agenda, they are agreeing to do it in all aspects, and the mayor read those aspects. Everything from the liability and insurance to the operation, construction, repair, maintenance, care for, et cetera, et cetera. We would no longer have roadmasters of CN coming into Lamar's, inspecting the city track and giving us a list of to-dos, and we've gotten those almost on a yearly basis, sometimes semi-annual basis, whereby we had to replace ties, plates, just you name it, we had to do the repair. What this contract does is Burlington would do all that for you, 100%. They would not only inspect the track, but they would repair it as needed. Now, before you can get that accomplished, the second motion, what that does is terminates the current agreement with CN, and more particularly Chicago Central and Pacific, who that was the author of that agreement. We need to terminate that, but we're in a little bit of a catch-22. We can't terminate CN until we have another party. We can't have the other party until the Surface Transportation Board at Washington, D.C. acknowledges the city's track as a common carrier. So what we would ask you to do is approve the termination of the CN agreement, subject to that Surface Transportation Board action and subject to final negotiations relative to the short line, which is Burlington. And we would ask you to approve the Burlington switching services agreement subject to the final negotiations, so that once everything is final, then we can sign the two and give each party the revisions. So it's kind of like a real estate contract. You don't want to give me the check until I give you the deed. I don't want to give you the deed until I get the check. This is what's going on here. We've got two agreements. One is being terminated, one is being agreed to, and we got to get the two to intermesh before it's a final deal.
And on December 10th, the two railroads are meeting in Chicago to start this process going in regard to the Surface Transportation Board agreements.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. On December 10th, they're going to meet in Chicago, and then furthermore, Burlington has on retainer an attorney in Washington DC by the name of John Hefner, who will be working on their behalf, but therefore on our behalf, to get us declared as a common carrier in front of the Surface Transportation Board, which is in Washington DC as well. So all the pieces are in place, we believe, at this point, and that's why it's being brought forward at this time.
Somebody might ask, what's in it for Burlington Junction? And I think that one of the important issues is they will be doing marketing, and they will also be doing a lot of transloading. So there is an incentive for them to be here. It's great for us, but we hope it's good for them too.
Actually, totally as stated. It is good for both parties. We end up saving a lot of expenditures, and our revenue was not meeting expenditure, so therefore we have a savings, the city. They have the potential for the switching charges that are contained in the agreements as loads come in. So they will get paid to do the switching work. They're in, help me, 7 or 8 different locations in Illinois and in Iowa. Their headquarters is in Burlington, Iowa, and this would represent an 8th or 9th location for them. So they're seasoned, and they've been around the block, and they know what they're up against. And just what Ken stated is so very true. They really see the future very bright as far as transloading and getting other venues happening on the city track. So in that regard, I do want to point out the provision that is contained in this document as far as the city would start receiving. It's on page 4 under Article 6B. City's compensation wouldn't start until there's 1,500 rail cars coming into our industrial park, at which point the city would start receiving $25 a car. Now, what you do need to realize is that prior to that time, we would relinquish what we set in motion a few years back, and that is the $50 per car charge that we were previously doing. And we were having to collect that directly from our industry. And it was falling substantially short of what we were spending on all those checklists for repairs, maintenance, and quite frankly, the operation of the track. So although we're giving up the $50, we're also giving up 100% of the expenditure. And so,
And liability.
and liability, so therefore the city stands to save a fair amount of money by just not being involved with the whole equation.
Is that car count an annual car count?
Yes.
That isn't, and does it have a, like, January 1 to December 31st, or how does that work? Not a big deal, I'm just kind of curious.
As stated, January 1st to December 31st.
Okay, and then the only thing that I guess the one of the questions that I have is it says the financial impact, nearly all operate. Is there any, what's the downside here? What is the downside?
Well, the downside is you still have your ownership title. You're the title holder of that rail. You are not selling it. You have an asset, you own it, meaning city, city owns it, so you know how that goes. You know, anytime you're owner, you can't, Joe can speak better to this, you can't indemnify the owner completely.
Right.
You're gonna be a
They'll
little
do it.
liability person on a lawsuit.
Absolutely.
The one key word in that, in what's in your agenda, is defense.
Right.
Burlington has agreed to defend you.
Right.
So they're indemnifying you and defending you if something should come about.
Right.
One of the big issues here is also is the fact that this city's pretty economically minded when it comes to growth. And by putting these kind of services in place where they're going to have power on the ground and they're going to have people on the ground to better serve not only our existing customers, but also possibility of future customers. And that service point is going to be worth a lot, by all means. Neil?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo a few things that have been stated. I fully believe that this is a step that will allow the city to more fully utilize a piece of infrastructure, sizable piece of infrastructure, which is currently in place and has been paid for. You've heard me say a number of times that 80 to 85% of all economic development growth comes from your existing industries. Probably the most efficient thing we can do for our companies to allow them to grow is to provide the most business-friendly environment that we can, and this is another step in that direction, I fully believe. We're seeing that already in the industrial park with more activity with rail. Companies can make the greatest product in the world, but if you can't get it in an efficient manner out to the customer base, to consumers, that is a negative impact upon your business. So the more efficiently we can help them get their products out and bring in products that they need, that's going to just make our company stronger and grow. And we've seen that over the years. Our expansions have been sizable and numerous over the years, and we believe will continue to be so. I also firmly believe that there are a lot of companies out there that don't want to necessarily invest in bringing rail right to their facility, but once, as Ken mentioned, they understand the capabilities we have in transloading for a variety of companies. That's going to create a lot more interest again in our industrial park. So I fully support this move, and I think it's definitely the right direction to go, as does the LBIC.
Thank you, Neil.
Is it safe to say that most all the track activity would be south of Gus Pesch? Because that's really the breaking point for where the city picks up. So it's not going to like congest, Central Avenue even more, or will it? What's that impact?
Yeah, I appreciate you, your question. This should have only a positive impact on the main line. And so what you explained is the rail going through Lamar's is the main line. The demarcation point from the main line into the industrial park is right there by Gus Peck, right on Lincoln. And this agreement starts at that demarcation point and goes south into the industrial park. Where it becomes a benefit for all of us in Lamar's is there has been time, we all witnessed it, where CN came in and it took them up to 2.5 hours of sitting in Lamar's on the main line doing their switching operation. And the reason for that is the old agreement and having no other agreement. So by the city having only an agreement with CN, then if they needed to push cars all the way south to 27 to get them to IML, and furthermore link up and take some empties from Martin Marietta, take some empties from Colbeck, all of that took time, and in the worst case, I think Dick clocked 2.5 hours that it tied up the main line, and in some of those cases, it ties up some of our crossings. So then the train is sitting over 18th Street or it's sitting over someplace, and we're waiting for them to do all this switching. What this contract does, it's called kind of a hook and haul. So CN comes into town, they're still going to have to stop, but they push it just beyond the demarcation point, and they dump it right there.
The whole works.
The whole, whatever they've got.
Sure,
Let's
then
say they
leave.
have 2 for IML and 4 for Martin Marietta and a couple of cottonseed on that one train. Those, whatever, I lost track of what I was saying there. 8 cars.
Whatever.
would get dumped by CN, and in 10 or 15 minutes, the major locomotive takes back off.
Okay.
Because they don't have to go clear south, they don't have to go into the sidings. That's where Burlington Junction then will pick up those 8 cars, put 2 here, 2 here, and 4 there. And if that takes 2 hours, who cares, because it's all in the industrial park.
Right, it's done.
And then they'll switch cars for the pickup again the next time the CN comes through.
Well, and then they're on direct communication with CN, so they know when the main train is coming back, and so they gather up all the empties, and they're ready for them the date and hour that CN shows up, and the empties get pulled back out. And then we don't have 6 locomotives, all called trackmobiles, that are operating on sidings and on city track, because those industries will not have to purchase those. So there's a direct savings for our industries as well. And then I do want to call your attention to page 4 again, under subsection 6C, 7, performance standards. I just want to point this out, that under this contract, they have agreed to have at least 2 locomotives in Lamar's. They'll have boots on the ground and a minimum of 3 people. They will have minimum hours of 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then hours on weekends and holidays upon request of our industry. And they are guaranteeing a maximum amount of time for the switching of 150 minutes. And that has not been the case with the CN contract. So I think that's a huge positive for our industries again. So,
The only other question that I got then on this is, can you touch bases on hazardous materials? Is there any need to touch bases on that? Because it's mentioned in this contract, 1,500 cars, they start paying you after 1,500 cars at 25, but then it kind of excludes hazardous. What's that all about?
our track, as it turns out, is in accordance with the Federal Rail Administration, truncated by FRA. So we meet FRA. And the last time that was evaluated, it was by an inspection done by Burlington Junction. And all of their facilities, in fact, it's federal law, that you will meet their standards. That's kind of the minimum threshold. So our track is capable of handling hazardous material, and as such, we intend to market to that industry for transloading purposes. And we don't have anything that we can announce at this point, but it's actively being pursued.
Sure. And our emergency people feel pretty safe with it all? I mean,
We have it all coming through on the main line as we speak anyway, so yes.
Okay.
We've done the best we can to prepare for
Okay,
these things. yes.
absolutely, okay.
Just this past weekend, Clark, if you were along there, there was at least 100 cars of some kind of petroleum product being taken through Lamar's. It just happened this past weekend.
Sure, absolutely. Oh, I believe it. I mean, I was just
And
curious.
you're going to see more of this.
The reason I ask is because they separate it out in the they exclude hazardous cars from the 1,500 count. Am I reading that right? And possibly I'm reading that wrong, but I can't tell you which page it is, but it looked to me like from the 1,500 count, it doesn't include, I should have underlined it, I apologize. I thought it excluded any hazardous cars.
Yeah, it's in subsection 6B in the last sentence. And you're stating that correctly.
There's a reason for that we can't discuss.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all right, yeah.
Okay, all right, so.
More to learn later.
I'd make a motion to approve the switching services agreement with Burlington Short Line Railroad Incorporated as presented and subject to final resolution with the CN Railroad.
Second to
Is
the
there a
motion.
second? Motion been made and second to approve the switching services agreement with the Burlington Short Line Railroad Incorporated as presented or as amended and subject to a final resolution with the CN Railroad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Motion to authorize mayor and city clerk to terminate the October 9, 2009 industry track agreement with CN Railroad doing business as Chicago Central and Pacific Railroad Company, subject to final negotiation with CN Railroad and subject to complete establishment of city track as common carrier by the Surface Transportation Board with right of authority to Burlington Short Line Railroad.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Motion been made and second to authorize the mayor and city clerk to terminate the October 9th, 2009 industry track agreement with CN Railroad doing business as Chicago Central and Pacific Railroad Company, subject to final negotiation with the CN Railroad and subject to complete establishment of city track as a common carrier by the Surface Transportation Board with the right of authority to Burlington Junction Short Line Railroad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, fellas.
Is this normal city council stuff?
Yeah,
This is what we're supposed to know before we take this job?
yeah.
Okay.
It's changed.
We're learning as well.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because.
Well, you've been on here for 16 years.
A long time, and I don't remember doing short line track negotiations.
Well, this is the first one that's ever come up to us.
I remember taking over the track and wondering why we took it over, but,
There's more good news to come.
I'll be sitting right here, Kenny, when you bring it, okay?
And I think I'd add to that comment, the mayor and Scott and Bill have worked very hard, and
Neil.
as you know, and Neil also, have been involved in a lot of meetings, and they put a lot of hard work into this. Glad to see it moving forward.
Well, it's all good stuff, it's just that this is pretty complicated stuff when you gotta terminate one before you can get one, but then you can't terminate till you get the federal people to agree to it, and good luck with that.
Gets a little heavy once in a while.
Yeah. So,
Okay, moving on. Discussion, John?
Nothing, Your Honor.
You have anything?
that's-
I'll pass, thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, 5 or 6 items. We pulled the trigger on doing some drainage improvements that had been promised, if you recall, with Dean Foods. And so if you've been out by Dean Foods, you've seen some construction activity there just within the last 2 weeks. And it turns out that although the weather turned sour and severely cold, that worked towards our advantage because that small tributary that drains pretty much 24/7 normally kind of froze up, and that gave us the opportunity to get in there without it being a swamp hole. And so anyway, it went really, really well, and they were able to take out the low water crossing and put in the larger diameter. We took out 18-inch pipes, 2 of them, and put in 3 48-inch. So we dramatically improved the flow characteristics of that tributary going through Dean Foods property. And if you recall, that was the agreement with Dean Foods. If they did the work that they had already done late last year, that we would finish it up going through their property. We have yet to go farther downstream, of which you had previously approved the work on Lincoln Street and the work right there by McDonald's, that drainage ditch. So those 2 work will be coming forth sometime next year. The Public Works Building is proceeding fairly well, and some increased activity has occurred there. All salt has been transferred from the Crescent Ridge Storage Building to the cold storage. So all your salt for this coming winter is now in the new facility. The contractor still is kind of pecking away at the warranty items. I don't know, it filled about 2 sheets of paper, single space, just different items that were under warranty as a result of completing the wastewater project. And Rice Lake and Vanderpool are both completing those items fairly steadily at this point. So most of them are getting knocked off the list. The water tower has once again been discontinued, and it's because of the weather. If you recall, I think I had reported that Caldwell tanks was willing to put in writing that they would do the water tower fluted column up until the point that weather in Lamar's started hitting 20 degrees or less for a sustained period of time. And so that occurred, as you well know. And so as of last week, they discontinued building the fluted column. What they were able to get constructed were the first two sections of the fluted column above the foundation ring. So more on that to come as we continue to talk to them. They will probably not be back to restart construction until, we're thinking, March. The interior demolition, and I should call that more salvage, but it is demo as well as salvage. We pulled all of the wood and metal and copper and aluminum out of the CSS building the best we could and tried to get it to a point where whether the choice is to tear the building down, that it would be ready for that, or if the choice is to effectively turn that into a police department and use that as a shell. You can go either way, and no matter what, we had to do what we have done. So we did hire a firm to do that, and you've probably seen some activity there, and we've salvaged all those items that I mentioned. And then finally, the last report I got is on the energy management program. We have done 12 facilities thus far as walkthroughs, and we're going to do 3 more on tomorrow. And then the committee as a whole is going to meet on December 9th to go over what we saw. And I also kind of reported on the YMCA folks, so some of you have heard this. We're also beginning the process of benchmarking all the facilities. So what that simply means is we're taking the utility bills for a 2-year period and entering those into a computer so that we can see trends and see what facilities have the greatest likelihood of energy savings. On the cursory review of that question, Jason Parker, who is our energy management specialist and who helped do the walkthrough, he really feels that of the first 12 walkthroughs that we've done, the combination of CWC, indoor and outdoor pool, is the top of the list for potential energy savings. And a lot of that has to do with just, the kind of function that's going on there. And some of it has to do with the fact that, especially the CWC, that was built for a college, and then we just assumed it as a rec center. And as such, the air handling equipment is mammoth, absolutely mammoth. And, their occupant loads as a college were probably in the 2,000, 2,500 occupancy load. And we're lucky to get 400 in that facility at any one time. And so just due to the differences in occupancy, we think there could be potentially a substantial amount of savings. So more on that to come. We hope to get through December with the balance of the analysis and come to you in January with some concrete recommendations. That's all I have.
On the police building, what are you finding? I mean, is it looking like something that's gonna be remodeled, or, is there any preliminary ideas, or?
I can tell you this as an engineer, I think the structural capability of the shell of the building, and by shell I mean the foundation, the above grade walls, and the support structure of the roof, all look extremely good.
Okay.
Now, if the configuration of that box is not what we want, then we'd have to start making some changes.
Sure. Or to take that configuration, or take the box we got and make it the configuration we need. maybe excessively more than a totally new facility.
Yes, either one of those, yeah.
When do you expect that recommendation?
Well, two of us, myself and Jay King, did go to Kansas City, and we sat through 2 days of a workshop specifically designed around all of the details that you need to go through in order to put together a police station. And quite frankly, it had to do with both fire and police, but in our case, we were there for police. So two of us went through that, and I think once we get it to a point where we can see the shell for what it is, then we can start playing around with floor plans and what the police needs are. Stu has gone through the previous needs analysis from 8 or 9, 10 years ago that Mr. Wickers did, and he has updated that. And so with the needs analysis and the shell of the building, we should be able to come back fairly soon with a recommendation whether that box will work for what our needs are.
That's your question, Ken?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Bill?
The only thing I've got is to let you know that we have started our budget work for FY16. The worksheets went out to the departments, so over the next 30 days, we'll be compiling that data and getting it out. So, starting the process. Any of you have any input you'd like to give, just let me know.
Rex had asked for analysis of what we are obligated to do in the budget and what is not, so I assume that's coming along about the same pace, so we'll have a budget time.
We're going to try and have it budget time.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? If not, this ends our session for the council meeting, and we will be going into a closed